Thank you so much for being here today. Today, we are going to talk about special assessments, not only about the legalities of it, but I think we're going to talk a lot about how to sell it to your membership, because I think that is important. How to sell it to the owners, how to structure it, and whether you should just maybe borrow the money. And we have a great panel to get us there today. Before I go any further, everybody, we do the CEUs differently now. You should be using your question feature or your chat feature. Just use that and say, hey, Ray, I need CEUs. That's all you need to do. Put, I need CEUs. And that way I will make sure that you get them. If you're here for Florida or Illinois, by any chance, just make a note of that, even though I know what state you came from. But use that question feature today, not only to tell me about the CEUs, but I love comments and I love questions. Yesterday, we had a great segment because people asked a lot of questions. It was actually a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. And I really do appreciate those questions and comments. I don't use anybody's names. I will relay the questions for you. So feel free to ask whatever you like. Be a little bit careful though, because you never know when I could slip up and maybe give your name out, but I've never done it so far. Before I have the panel jump on, what did I do with my piece of paper? If you're interested, I'm actually interviewing Michelle Baldry. I didn't put on the schedule at 2 o'clock. I don't know if you got reserved questions. It's not going to be an hour. Let me know. Use the question feature and say, Ray, I'm interested. I'll send you the link for reserve studies. Then we're back at 4 o'clock. HOA governance through a feminist theory lens. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. Dawn is going to be there and Dave is going to be there. And I took comparisons so people could learn two things at once. Dave Byrne in particular was super excited about this program. He's been pushing it for years. He loves feminist theory. It was his major in college. So no, none of that is true, but still Dave will be there anyway. But it's going to be a fun segment. Okay, with that being said, let's have our panel introduce themselves with who I see first, and that is Sean.
Good morning. My name is Sean O'Connor. I'm an attorney. I'm a shareholder with the law firm of Clarkson, McAloonis, and O'Connor in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. We have a full service law practice focused exclusively on community associations. We represent associations all across South Carolina with a full service law practice. I am particularly active in our South Carolina chapter of CAI. I'm a past president of the chapter, have also served on the Legislative Action Committee in years past and currently on the Blue Ribbon Committee. And as of late last year, I am now a CCAL fellow.
Plus you play hockey.
I do.
You're very busy. Deb.
Good morning, everyone. Deborah Girelli. I'm with Girelli Insurance Agency in New York. We have a department that specializes in community associations. I am on the New York LAC, and I have my CERMS designation from CAI National. Good to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. By the way, Sean, a lot of people congratulating you. That's very nice, audience. Thank you. John.
Hello, everyone. John Legumina from the Legumina Law Firm in Purchase, New York. We represent condominiums, co-ops, and HOAs from New York City throughout the Hudson Valley areas.
John, question from the audience. Is anything going on with your Italian villa right now?
Yeah, it's in need of significant repair. I was there recently.
It's funny what the audience remembers. Dawn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dawn Becker-Durnan, and just like Deb, I am also a CERMS. My practice is insurance on behalf of community associations. Acrisure is a national insurance agency, and we provide not only property and casualty, but employee benefits and other types of insurance. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
It's always a treat to have you, Cynthia. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cynthia Jones. I'm with Sellers, Ayers, Dorch, and Lyons. We are in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am licensed in North and South Carolina. Like Sean, we are a full service law firm for community associations. Sean deserves a lot of congratulations. That CCAL is very hard to get. So congratulations, Sean. And John, I'm super jealous. I don't have an Italian villa people are asking me about. So
just for John's sake, I joke around. It's debatable if he really has one. I at some point I heard he had something going on there. I don't know if it's even true anymore, but whatever. Do you guys have a special tattoo, CCALs, by any chance, that you get? Like
We
Olympians
don't, we
get?
don't talk about that.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to ask.
No special tattoos.
All right. Dr. Ingbloom.
Hi, good morning. My name is Tom Engblom. I'm with First Citizens Bank, cover many states. We do lending, lockbox, and I'm calling from beautiful Nashville Airport on my way to DC today.
You know, the panel was saying sometimes I'm mean to Tom. You know, I know Tom pretty well, and I think Tom is like one of the best people I know, just to be clear about that. And he's also one of the most intelligent, and he actually speaks around the entire country. But now I will go back to giving him a hard time for the rest of the session. But with Dave Byrne.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Byrne. I'm the chairperson of my law firm's community association practice. I represent associations in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania.
And Corey.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a retired amateur hockey player and an attorney. Our firm, Kovich, Schiffer, Nesbitt, I'm the managing principal of the Florida office, located in Boca Raton, Florida. We represent community associations all over Florida, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana.
Okay. And we have lost Sean O'Connor, so I don't know if he will be back. Cynthia, if he does not come back, if you could cover South Carolina, you are also licensed there. I would appreciate that. Thank you so much. Special assessments. So I thought I would come up with some reasons for a special assessment and fly through the panel and see what they think about it. And here are some of the reasons. Result of a past decision or a present crisis. I'll stick with the lawyers on this. John, what do you think? Which one is the most common? Is it the result of a past decision or a present crisis?
It should be a present crisis because it's supposed to be for something that's not anticipated. If it's anticipated, it should be in your budget.
Okay. So Cynthia, John said it should be, but is it always?
Well, no, I mean, that's the issue, right? Usually the past decision is we don't want to raise assessments, but they need to be raising assessments to cover their expenses. So it's sometimes, unfortunately, a combination of we've left assessments where they are, even though our expenses have gone up. And so now we're in dire need of some money and we have to get it quickly. Dave,
what do you think?
I agree with John. I think it's supposed to be something that you learn about, comes up, not anticipated.
Corey, you agree with the rest of the panel?
I do.
Now, Tom, you are in the lending business, so you would know this one also. What do you think?
I agree on the concept. It may evolve into something more complicated than as time progresses, but yes, I agree.
Okay, excellent. It could be the fastest way to create litigation. It's not the assessment itself that creates the litigation, it's poor process. I'll start with John on this. John, do you agree?
Repeat that again.
It's the fastest way to create litigation, but it's not the assessment itself that causes the problem. It's the actual process that the board uses to make it happen.
Okay, so I think they're getting at what I'll call a quote unquote surprise assessment. So yeah, you don't want to say in January or January 20th that February 1st, we have the special assessment without warning, because that will, I'm not saying that's going to lead to litigation, but that there'll be people that are upset with that. So I think it's important to be, to give a fair warning and explanation before you impose the assessment.
Okay, I don't want to dive too deep, Cynthia, but do you agree? Is it the actual assessment that becomes litigation, or is it the fact that boards don't go about it the right way sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I think John makes a great point. If they're surprised by the vote that they have to do on the special assessment because they didn't know it was coming, that's not great optics for the association. I think also sometimes what I see is procedurally, most associations have to get this voted on by their membership. So if they don't follow that process correctly, somebody who is upset about the special assessment is going to use that to try and challenge it.
Okay, I'm going to jump to something else for Dave and Corey. You can always backtrack if you want to. Sean, you're okay right now, but if we keep losing you, I'm just going to have you jump off, okay? Because
I think I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Legal checkpoints. I don't want to spend the whole session on the legal aspects of it because we want to talk about selling it and some of the other aspects. I'm going to start with Dave on this. Common procedural mistakes. I'm going to throw one at you here, Dave. Voting improperly. You want to jump on that, or you want to go to something else?
Well, yeah, that's particularly connected to New Jersey, where we have a statute recently amended to make it even more clear or onerous, depending on how you look at it. But basically, the New Jersey statute is that every decision a board makes, except maybe something relating to litigation or like employment, discipline, things like that, has to be done at an open meeting, at a board meeting open to attendance of owners, following 7 days notice, unless there's an emergency, in which case you can do it right away. So all kinds of rigorous things that our bureaucrats have come up with. And a lot of boards get tripped up on that alone, meaning the subject of the vote is almost always appropriate. But frankly, associations in New Jersey almost always ignore that, because until somebody calls them on it, they have no idea, no way to even know it exists.
Okay. So attorneys, I'm going to jump to the next one, but by all means go backwards. Okay. And I have like 5 of them here, so I'm sure you guys are going to want to add some onto there. And I'll review them with you one more time at the very end, so you don't have to try to remember which ones we went over. The next one I have, Corey, is failing to document deliberation. Accurate?
Yeah, it's very accurate because, if a vote is taken at a board meeting and there's no minutes to reflect that, then that could be a pretty easy defense to someone who doesn't want to pay the special assessment, that the vote wasn't properly taken and the document, or it wasn't properly noticed, the notice for the meeting. There's all sorts of pitfalls. And so that's why we always recommend, if you're going to partake in passing a special assessment, check with your attorney first to make sure the process is being followed.
So Sean, poorly drafted resolutions.
Yeah, I mean, you're opening the door to problems by, first of all, it's going to create miscommunication where the owners that are being asked to vote on this are voting on something that might be stated differently than what is actually being sought to be done. And it also could indicate that there's a disconnect between what is authorized and what the board is really trying to do. I mean, from things from which elements are subject to repair under the reserve account or via special assessment. And so anyway, yeah, that's another thing. Like Corey said, a resolution for something as significant as a large special assessment is certainly something that should be reviewed by legal counsel and make sure that resolution is properly worded.
So John, how about inconsistent payment options? Is that one that belongs up there?
Yeah, don't leave it loosey-goosey. Don't have too many alternatives and options. It has to be fixed, concrete amounts and dates. Otherwise, it's how are you going to enforce it? But just jumping back a little bit, in New York, it might be a little bit different from some of these other states I'm hearing. Is the default is usually almost every board has the authority to adopt a special assessment without needing a unit owner vote. But again, proper resolutions, don't just vote by email, because actually that's not really a valid vote in New York. And if you have properly drafted resolutions from your attorney, that will go a long way to making it bulletproof if someone wants to bring a lawsuit.
All right. And Cynthia, the last one I had, and I made a note of this because every one of you attorneys, you mentioned communication, skipping owner communication before formal action.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to upset your owners. I mean, that's all that's going to do. Keep an open dialogue with your owners. Let them know it's coming. It's a huge. It's going to be a bad meeting if they're surprised by a vote on a large special assessment that they don't know anything about. So
audience, this is a really good session. Learning how to sell a special assessment, I think, is a great thing to talk about and to think about. So really quick, attorneys, voting improperly, failing to document, poorly drafted resolutions, inconsistent payment options, skipping owner communication. Very quickly, Sean, did we skip anything?
No, I mean,
Okay.
the idea is you got to start early on this. I mean, all this
Right.
planning should begin months before it's presented
Right.
to the ownership.
Let me get to it.
Yeah.
John, did we skip anything? Cynthia, Dave, Corey, anybody? You think we
I just
basically?
want to say, like,
Sure.
not just inconsistent payment options, but making sure you're charging the assessment like your documents allow you to. Don't try and charge it a different way. That's going to be a bad thing.
Why would
Yeah.
somebody do that, Cynthia?
Well,
They're not
no,
paying attention to what's in their documents.
yeah, so she makes a good point, because if it's a condo in New York, it has to be done by percentage of common interest. And often, depends on the property, but they may want to do it equally, and you can't do that.
Don't you think it's safe to say, Dave, if you use an attorney, you're not going to have a problem with this for the most part? I mean, that's what attorneys do, right?
I mean, I guess I could try to be funny and say if you got, assuming you hire the right one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well-
this should be an attorney with who purports to specialize in representation of HOAs and condominiums and cooperatives should have the base element to know the 4 or 5 quick things to look at, and trouble spots should jump out pretty quickly, both from training, but also just through anecdotal experience. Most of my clients forget this, most of my clients forget that. Sometimes developers put this stupid provision in the wrong place. So lawyer, a client may go into a set of bylaws or and look for the provision on how to do an assessment, knowing that it's usually in the section that's entitled assessments, and then they don't realize that the developer might have put a provision in some other place that they didn't look in. Lawyers are supposed to sort of have the experience and knowledge to get a feel for whether or not there's other places that should be reviewed.
And don't use ChatGPT for that. We just did that yesterday.
No.
Okay. Really quick, Deb, have you had to handle any insurance claims related to special assessments?
Of course. But for insurance, we talk about special assessments, I think, a little differently, right? They have to do with covered perils that have occurred. So a claim has occurred and they have a shortfall that they're charging back to the unit owners. Because then there's also special assessments for maintenance, which isn't an insurance issue, but we have seen D&O claims with regard to people upset that they're being charged special assessments for maintenance.
And I apologize. I asked the question a little bit wrong there. Dawn, have you seen any special assessment litigation where people are suing the association in regard to the special assessments? I know discrimination is a big one. How about special assessments? Do boards need to be extra careful about this one?
Absolutely. In fact, what Deb and I do a lot of times before we even bring a client into our practice is to review financials, not just to determine the crime and fidelity limit, but to see what their health is, because that is an indication whether there is potential for litigation, including delinquency rates, as well as liens and foreclosures. So all of the items that were listed before, the voting, the resolutions, all of that can contribute to why someone would litigate in the event of a special assessment. And sometimes the bottom line is people will use that as a stalling factor in order not to pay.
All right. So Tom, get everybody excited about the importance of selling the special assessment. I mean, I think it should be like a story that should start as soon as the board knows it may be coming up. What do you think?
I agree. I think it's very important to lay that foundation and get ready for it.
I don't like to use my board too much as an example, but I would say we had a huge special assessment here. We have quite a few. I think they've done an excellent job of telling a story beforehand. And this is why this kind of topic was important to me, because I was just so impressed with the job that they did. They started months and months in advance, kind of educating that we had these problems, right? We had these engineering aspects, and they would talk about it a little, and they didn't talk about assessments, and they gradually got us there. And it wasn't an act of dishonesty or anything. It was an act of communication in bits in a process that I thought worked out really well for the community. So I feel like this is an important subject. So I will start with Cynthia and go the other way around if I mess up. Pre-announcement communication. I have about 9 parts of this, Cynthia, but do you think that's where we should be starting?
Oh, absolutely. As early as possible, you should be starting this talk. And I love what you said. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to start with okay, everybody, we're assessing $100,000 special assessment. It starts at the very beginning. Okay, we've had a reserve study or we had an engineer evaluate this. These are the things we're seeing, and moving forward from there. Very important.
And transparency, Dave, I thought was important in this also. I thought they did a good job with that.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think that I'm resistant sometimes into dealing with that issue, because that to me is more like a political kind of thing, where my job is to tell boards how to legally effectuate something, and not necessarily, well, you should have an open forum or a web page or something. You know what I mean? It's I don't know. I sort of focus more on the former, not the latter.
You know, Corey, it was totally a political situation, and they would invite, but not in a bad way. They invited engineers here. They invited other people that could educate the community, and the community could ask questions. It was 100% political. Is being political wrong?
No, it's part of the process. And I think what Dave was trying to get at was, as legal counsel, we counsel on the legal aspects, how to, frame it politically is not technically our job. However, in representing associations, we've seen that the better explain the process, the more people will come on board. You identify the issue, you share the panel of experts, the engineers, the contractors, whoever, who are tasked to fix the issue, share their bids, explain the cost, and then at that point you figure out how you're going to pay for it through special assessments, loans paid through special assessments, or if there's reserves or leftover cash from previous years. And as long as they understand the process, and you're not starting out with, here's a bill, some people are more prone to be willing to pay it.
And audience, we're going to talk about whether you should borrow the money or do a special assessment. So we're definitely going to hit. I'm going to skip show multiple financial scenarios. I'm going to go back to Tom on that one. Explain consequences of doing nothing. John, that was a big part of what they did also. They clearly outlined that you have to fix these things, or A is going to happen or B is going to happen.
Yeah, so I think that this is a really critical issue in New York. Is we don't have the money for that. And just, my response is, if you're in court, they don't, and there's an accident or something devastating that happens, that's not a defense that we didn't have the money. You have the ability to come up with the money with the special assessment process. So there is no defense to, or everyone here is on a fixed income. That's not a defense. So you need to take your long-term repairs and your short-term emergency repairs seriously, and not having the money is not a defense.
Correct. Well, it's correct, but the reason I'm mentioning that is that's the legal aspects. One thing I like that they did also is they didn't throw it out there where we have to do this. We. They did a great job of why first before they started getting out there and saying, we have to do it and you're going to have to put up with it and things like that. And, Sean, the last one I have is separate emotion from fiduciary obligation, I think, which is John kind of brought up, which was a great segue. But I will tell you, it was rough on the board anyway, though. I don't sit back and think everybody was like, this is terrific. They were immediately accused of this being all their fault. It was a rough process. It did not go easy, but separating emotion from fiduciary obligation, it was almost impossible in some aspects, but I thought it was critical. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to dollars and cents, and the way that it really resonates with most homeowners is to help them understand how it affects them directly. And the ways that it affects them directly is that it can significantly, decrease their property value. It can make it so that lenders shy away from or simply will not, make loans for people to purchase those units, and it might make it impossible to get insurance. And so these are things that are potentially catastrophic, and it becomes, you lay out a case like that, it becomes harder and harder for any reasonable person to dispute it or deny it.
Deb and Dawn, can you make a note of that about the insurance? Because I do not think I have that as one of my talking points. So if you guys can remind me about that, I would appreciate it. Really quick, someone from the audience wrote in, and I am skipping some questions, so I'll try to get to them, audience. I had an association invite a local well-known realtor to do their info meeting and explain the potential benefits of property values for getting work done and the potential negative impact of values if the work was not done. I don't know. I think that sounds absolutely terrific. Anybody on the panel have any concern about that? I mean, I think it sounds a great way. People definitely want their property values. So really quick, avoid blame, avoid panic language. Panel, anybody got an idea of what a panic language would be? I'm throwing you on the spot here. Cynthia, anything? I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head.
Sky is falling?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to shut down the building if we don't have this repaired in the next 30 days, something like that. I mean, that would be a pretty serious issue, but it's possible.
I got to admit, I'm a little on the fence on that one because they did use some panic language, and I thought that also worked out well. Anybody on the panel think I'm wrong on that? Okay, but they were careful. They didn't want to make it sound like the building was a piece of junk and it was going to collapse. Avoid minimizing the issue and also avoid surprises. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so Tom, we're going to go and, well, Tom, you've been involved in a lot of special assessments, right? Really quick,
Yes.
Any other talking points do you think that should have been hit in regard to selling it?
No, everything that was discussed or talked about, I think it's right on. Get everyone involved, communicate properly, and be an open book.
Okay, so someone has watched a previous live stream, so I appreciate it so much. And they were asking me one time, Ray, you had mentioned about the importance of public relations. Well, that was like my opinion. I'm going to start with Corey on this and go the other way around. Corey, sometimes boards can't communicate well. And if you're going to have a multi-million-dollar special assessment, is it wrong to maybe think about having somebody help out with the story plan?
No, I don't think it's wrong. It's going to save you a headache. Remember, you're a volunteer on the board. And if everyone's calling you and sending you emails, complaining because they don't understand or they've heard rumors about a special assessment, and you have a day job, you're not going to get your work done because you're going to be dealing with HOA business all day. So communication is key. If you need help with it, it's probably worthwhile.
Dawn, I could go to you on this one before I kind of drop it here. I think boards over assume their ability to communicate well. And also they just don't want to admit the fact that they can't do it. And if you have a marketing background or something, you may be good at that, but it's very common for a board to be terrible at it and not realize it. And I think it could have disastrous effects. Do you agree?
I do agree. And I think that a lot of people are very worried about how they're going to be, the opinion of their neighbors will be, and whether they're going to be harassed at home. And a lot of people want to keep it close to the vest. And to be very frank with you, because volunteers are not professionals, it can be a very difficult situation for them to even tackle. And because it's not a full-time job, the lack of participation or availability, sometimes timing of it all, can further exasperate the issue.
All right, Tom, I'm going to put the attorneys on the spot here. I have no idea what they're going to answer. What do you think they're going to say, Tom, if I ask them if they think it's appropriate to ask the attorney how to sell a special assessment? Because I would imagine attorneys have seen this process, but they're not there, like Dave said, and I don't blame them. They're there for legal work, not public relations. But what do you think our attorneys are going to say? And what do you think about that?
Half are going to say they should be involved. The other half are going to say no.
All right,
and
let's see.
I personally think they should be involved.
Okay, and do you think, I'm going to ask them, do you think the board should be willing to pay for that?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. That's a different aspect. I did not think. Deb, what do you think the attorneys are going to say?
I'm going to say that they should definitely be involved in the process, but I don't know about the selling of it.
Okay. I meant as far as selling goes, helping the board tell a story. Basically, but they're getting out, I'm admitting it, they're getting outside the legal aspects. They're getting more into public relations, but they may or may not know. Dawn, really quick, what do you think before we poll them?
I think it's going to be a mixed bag, primarily because it depends, right? On is it a situation that involved a potential legal matter or could evolve? It's very delicate, it's precarious, all of that are factors. Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right, so let's take that all away from them so we really put them on the spot. And let's start with Corey. Corey, really, let's do this one quick. What do you think? Are you comfortable with it?
I like being involved. I think it goes a lot smoother. But I also understand that, our primary job is to give the legal guidance. But from experience, like you said, I think it goes much smoother.
Dave.
I think Dawn's use of the word delicate is apt. When these things come up for me, I try to get the boards to tell me ahead of time, like what it's their community, what works best for your community. Sometimes when a lawyer stands up and does all the talking, it's obnoxious, and it shows weakness on the part of board members. Sometimes when the lawyer's not talking and a board member's talking, it shows the board's not prepared and hasn't, relied on professionals. It's very, very delicate, but ultimately, I think it's usually better for lawyers to be more actively involved than less actively involved. But I don't think boards should automatically assume that lawyers need to talk and do stuff. And I see this even in letters, or a board will say off topic, we want to make a change with X company. We need you to send a letter. Why does a lawyer have to send a letter? Are you planning on suing these people? Why does a lawyer have to be involved? It just raises all kinds of weird dynamics. So I think boards have to be sensitive to that.
Cynthia, let me be clear in the situation that I don't want the lawyer to do the talking. I want the lawyer to help the board formulate a public relations plan and change my wording if you need to, Cynthia. Do you think that's appropriate for a lawyer?
Yeah, I do it all the time, right? I'm an advisor for the nonprofit communities that I work with. If they send me a special assessment meeting notice to review, absolutely I go through it and help soften that language or give them some guidance on tips that I have seen be successful at other meetings that I've been to. And I think that just makes us look like a team, right? I'm not having to take it over, but I'm standing beside them and I'm there for that guidance if they need it. But yeah, I do that all the time.
So John, I'm talking about hey, at this meeting, you start talking about this, and at the next meeting, you talk about that, and you come up with a whole game plan. Is that something you feel a board should be comfortable asking and paying an attorney for?
Yeah, so I agree with what Tom initially said. You shouldn't. I think an attorney could help. Cynthia just mentioned it. You didn't go to law school to figure out how to write special assessment notices, but we often have experience doing it and probably could really assist in the process. But you also want to double check the governing documents to make sure you're not doing something that violates a governing document. So having attorney involvement is good. How deep you go, I agree with the other comments too. You should rely more on your property manager than your attorney for that.
Yeah, I was thinking about the property manager, Sean, but sometimes they're not qualified for it either. They're not every property manager is a public relations expert. But Sean, wrap us up here. Commentary.
Yeah, most attorneys that have been doing this kind of work for a while have guided communities through this process, and so can bring that experience and perspective and value to guide and helping their client get across the finish line. And that's at the end of the day, that's one of the things we're good at, or supposed to be good at, is persuasive communication and helping people see complex issues and boiling them down so that they're easier to understand and more straightforward. So absolutely, it's something that the attorney should be involved in. Now, having said that, I've seen clients hire a professional PR firm for special assessments. And depending on how big of a community it is and how big the issue is, I'm not saying that's not a bad idea either, but most of the time, that's what people expect from their attorney. That's what they're paying for. So that's what they ought to get.
As an owner, for me, I would not be against the association hiring a public relations firm to educate me properly. Meaning, I don't want my time wasted, right? To have a bunch of board members up there that just don't know how to communicate it. If they want to pay someone who can communicate it honestly, I'm all for it and paying for it within reason. And whatever I want should be the most important thing, Cynthia, in the entire world. Everybody knows
Of
that.
course, right? We all know that, right?
Okay. With that being said, let's talk about whether you should be borrowing money or doing special assessments, or maybe they're the same thing. I realize that I may not know. Tom, situations where loans make sense. I have about 5 talking points here. Do you want me to fly through them really quick and then you can run with it? Okay. Large capital projects, roof replacements in high-rise buildings, multi-phase infrastructure, disaster deductible spikes, and communities with high delinquency rates. Why? This is my research. It doesn't mean anything. Why is that stuff there? Does it make any sense?
It makes sense. First of all, if they have a high delinquency rate, say over 10% of the total number of units, they're not going to get a loan. No bank will give them a loan for that. If you have an emergency disaster, typically an association won't give a loan. They may give a line of credit for that.
Hold on a second, Tom. I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So I have these down. I don't want to confuse the audience and misrepresent information here. I have this down as a situation where loans make sense, but you're telling me it's the opposite, correct?
For
so this is 100%
particular,
wrong.
No. For those particular two, it's just not going to be conducive for the association to get a loan if they have a high delinquency list. It just won't happen because how are you going to pay that money back? That's ultimately what it comes back to. And typically most banks have a threshold of 10% of the total number of units, 60 days or more. So if you're coming in there with a 20% delinquency, a bank isn't going to give you a loan for that.
See, audience, why you should never just take your information off. That's what I always say all the time, because that's where I like to get my stuff. And I like to do it that way so people see also. And you also said, Tom, disaster spikes, and I'll go to the insurance people on that. That's also not a good reason to get a loan?
No, I mean, we get called all the time. Can you provide a loan for our insurance? Insurance is part of an operating expense, no different than a disaster. You're not going to be able to get a loan for a disaster that comes up. You have to plan for it and go through the communication cycle that we went through previously that we talked about.
Okay, let me jump back to you, Tom. Let me jump to Deb really quick on this point, and then Dawn. Deb, Tom mentioned disaster deductible spikes, not a good reason to get a loan. What are you commentary?
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing an increase in insurance premiums and an increase in insurance deductibles. And as far as I know, banks are not willing to provide loans for that. Here in my office, we do finance agreements through a finance company to help them, but then they're being charged finance charges. But no, banks are not loaning money to associations who don't have proper funding to handle these increase in deductibles or premiums.
All right, so Dawn, these are 2 scary ones then for associations in particular.
Yeah, now to speak to disasters, I think the other aspect is that from the homeowner perspective, not understanding that their homeowner's insurance or HO6 coverage may be applicable to some of these common assessments that occur. So not reaching into your actual pockets, but having a discussion with your homeowner's carrier is really important. And then communities with high delinquency rates, it's very upfront. They're just such a poor risk ultimately for even an insurance carrier. They're more apt to have a claim because of unfavorable conditions that are currently in existence. So carriers may put higher deductibles because it's almost of a, we don't want to provide insurance, but we have to, and this is where we're at. So the more important factor is for what are they working towards? We want to know, Deb and I want to know a story of how are they going to fix this? What is their communication moving forward? Are they not going to fix it? Because if not, I mean, ultimately, that's just going to be a situation with a special assessment that's probably going to lead to litigation.
Okay. So attorneys, so these two are off. And before I go back to Tom, really quick, if there's no commentary, that's great too, because we've got 20 minutes left. But really quick, Sean, any commentary in regard to the commentary we've heard about disasters not being good for loans, deductible increases, and high delinquency? Sean, any commentary? John, Cynthia, Dave, or Corey, any legal aspects? Okay. Tom, are any of these right? Okay. Situations where loans make sense, large capital projects. What do you think about that one?
Well, I think loans make sense all the time. So large capital project, I mean, do you want to write a check today or do you want to have it amortized over 10 or 15 years? That's the whole benefit of a loan, spreading it out over time for the unit owners. You know, you pay 25,000 up front or you're going to pay 200 a month for the next 10 or 15 years. That's a true advantage of a loan.
How about roof replacements in high-rise buildings? I don't know why that's on there, but it is.
All the time. I mean, typically it's going to be capital project, could be roof, siding, concrete, a pool repair. It varies depending on the geographical location of the association.
And then last one, infrastructure repairs would be the same as roof replacement, right?
Correct. I mean, infra. It could be plumbing. Just did a huge loan in Chicago, $14 million to replace their risers. That's infrastructure. What about elevators? You can go down the list of what needs to be done.
So for loan factors, Tom, I had owner affordability, impact on resale, loan, I can't pronounce that. What is that? Convenient restrictions? Confident, sorry.
restriction.
And then impact on future boards, total cost of capital. I'm going to go to the lawyers on this one. Man, should these play a role in whether or not you take a loan? Tom, from the finance part?
Definitely. I mean, it's on, you know, if a association comes and they're going to have to pay that loan back, how are they going to pay it back? Well, they're going to have to special assess. Well, if everybody's going to be special assessed $100,000 and the units are only worth 80, a bank is going to have a problem with that because people can walk away from their mortgage. So it's all about the balancing of the financial aspect, and how long they're going to take to pay it back.
Corey, commentary on where we're at right now.
Yeah, and one thing that people don't realize is that the way that the security or the collateral for the lender is the lien assignment rights, the ability to special assess if the board doesn't. And so that's one of the risk factors. When we were talking about earlier, if there's a high delinquency rate showing people can't afford it, then it's going to make it harder for the loan to be processed by the bank.
Okay, I have to do a little housework here. So if you're watching the recorded version of this, you need to do a CEU check-in. We're putting these out for CEU recorded versions. And right now you need to put needs CEUs. So if you didn't know that and you cut out early and you think you're going to get your CEUs, you're not unless you do this. So if you're not for this audience, you're fine. I know how long you're here for. This is for those that watch the recorded version. But you won't hurt anything if you put it in, don't worry. But these are once again for when we put out the recorded versions in there. For CAMICB, I need to have these CEU checked in here. So I'm going to jump over to John on this. John, can I move on or any commentary on what we've discussed so far?
No, you can move on.
Okay. Dave, commentary?
Yeah, I'm with John.
Okay. You're always with John, I notice. I like
usually
it.
It's usually a good it's usually a good choice.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that was nice. Cynthia.
I'm good.
All right. Well, everybody hopped on the John band. Everyone knows John is terrific. Everyone hopped on the bandwagon. Okay. Tom, so we just kind of went over when borrowing is smarter. Do you want to summarize that before we jump into some other aspects here?
Well, again, I think it's smarter because I just had a conversation with someone in Florida. They need to repair their elevators. Everybody's going to get hit with $20,000. How many people can write a check for $20,000 versus amortizing that over 10 years, 120 payments. It's more convenient, more conducive to spread out over time. And people still have the option, if they have 20,000, to write a check up front. So you have the best of both. You can pay it all or pay it over time.
Cynthia, can I tell you something mean that I'm thinking about?
Sure.
You know why I don't like loans? Because if you live in an association where people just kick the can down the road and they're ready to kick the can, I'd rather do the special assessment because I can't stand the fact that they didn't make any repairs on a building for 40 years and then they got away with it. But I guess in the whole scheme of things, that's just what association life is. They get away with it, right? Because they're never going to have to pay towards those repairs they should have done for 40 years. Do you think that's
Well,
mean or do you think that's honest?
no, I mean, unfortunately, that's what we see, right? They don't want to be the ones that are raising the assessments that need to be raised to put into reserves to account for what's provided in that reserve study. So when the repairs are needed, they have the money. They're trying to be nice, but in the end, it's not being nice. It's actually hurting everybody who comes in the future. If a consistent increase was made, they might never have to do a special assessment.
Nice for them because they didn't have to pay. All right. Situation. Let's compare. Assessment, immediate burden compared to a loan spread cost over time. Tom?
I think it's better to have it spread over time.
Okay.
The true benefit.
Now, Sean, political backlash you're going to get with an assessment. And a loan is a little more sneaky. It's less visible up front. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I mean, the political backlash can be managed if we do all the things right that we were talking about in the earlier part of the program, planning ahead, open communication, transparency, and really just, frankly, candor is a big part of this. I mean, if you're at a spot where you need a large special assessment or you need to consider a big loan, then something has gone wrong. I mean, chances are it's because the assessments were not high enough going back some number of years, or the reserve account was underfunded, and the board, can't change what happened in the past, but really just needs to be frank and candid about that and put all its cards on the table, and that way you can manage the political backlash.
All right, so I want to keep an eye on our time panel. So Deb, I'm going to ask the attorneys if they think political backlash is a bad term in our industry, because we're not supposed to be political, right? I'm just curious. Deb, what do you think they're going to say?
I actually think they would agree that is what happens, though, because you're on a board, so people are mad at you for what you're doing, so it is a little bit of a political backlash. So I don't think that's a bad term to use.
Dawn, what do you think? Very quickly.
I don't think it's a bad term either.
Oh, really? Okay. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's not national politics. It's quasi politics. It's the local politics of you. Like you are elected, right? If you want to get reelected, you got to consider what your constituents may want.
Oh, okay. Cynthia, Dave, and Corey, do you agree? You don't have an issue with the term? All right.
Yeah, nothing.
Tom,
nothing gets people going to board meetings more than saying there's going to be a special assessment.
That's true. I've actually heard boards tell me that's a good way just to get people there. Sort of rumor that you're going to have a huge. Tom's nodding his head. Oh, you're all nodding your head. That's kind of mean, but it does get people there. And I guess then they're happy, right? When they get there, they realize that it's not true. Assessment, no interest cost. A loan has interest expense. Tom, accurate?
Yes, and the amount of interest that you're paying is going to be minimal.
All right, but this is a big one, Tom. Assessment, risk of non-payment compared to predictable payment stream.
They really have no recourse, because what do they do now for collecting their assessments? They have a process, and that's why a bank will look and see what your delinquency is. And if it goes above that threshold, then you're not going to get a loan. But what happens now, when they don't pay it, they're turned over to the attorney. It's the same process. Nothing changes.
So Tom, do you think this is a valid, these are valid points for boards to consider, or you think it's a non-issue?
No, I think it's a valid point.
Dave, what do you think?
I think I'd go back to what Tom said, which is depends what the definition of minimal is. I mean, interest is usually pretty high to most people. I've seen associations. Look, I don't know if this is correct, but anecdotally to me, it seems like you should never borrow money if you can pay it yourself. But if someone wants to loan you money at 0 interest, you always say yes. So, but I think if you need to raise X amount of dollars and half of your people can pay an assessment immediately, you do that and you borrow to cover the rest of the money, and you have those people pay the interest, maybe, that kind of thing.
Okay. And then the last one I have, Tom, is simpler accounting for an assessment compared to more structured reporting for a loan. Is that true?
No, it's the same. My balance is $10,000. Divide that by 120 payments, and it goes back to what Dave just said. People that want to prepay, they prepay. That reduces the amount of the loan, which in turn reduces the amount of interest for the other people.
Don, I think
it's simple accounting.
Don, I think 30% of my slides were off today. So this may be a record.
No, not at all.
Dawn's such a good cheerleader, isn't she? It's not that bad. Okay. Loan factors, owner affordability, impact on resale, confident restrictions, impact on future boards, total cost of capital. The cheapest option isn't always the lowest risk decision. Anybody? Cynthia, when I say it like that, does it help drive the point home, or is it just annoying? Be honest.
I mean, you always help drive the point home, right?
Okay. It could have fallout during election cycles. There's a recall risk. There's a manager turnover risk if you make life too miserable for everybody. I'm flying through these because I want to have special time for closing thoughts with everybody. Reputational damage if you publicize it wrong. Media exposure, especially in condos. We had our decks done here, and the news ran with a completely false story. And everybody got through it. Everything's fixed and repaired now, and the building's in better shape. But it was aggravating. Will this destabilize the community? What is the delinquency threshold? Have we stress tested the numbers? What does our reserve study recommend? Okay, now there was a lot we went over, but I'm giving the panel plenty of time for closing thoughts to fill in the blanks. I will start with Dawn.
Living in a community association, especially if you're in a condo association that needs significant repairs, you have to understand there may come a time that there would be a special assessment. So hopefully the communication will be thoughtful and thorough. If not, please have a very exceptional directors and officers policy, because you're going to need it.
And you couldn't get in cyber insurance today. You love segueing cyber insurance. You couldn't do it.
Well, we could get in there. I could go there.
Well, okay. I shouldn't challenge you. I know. All right. Let me hit you with a question, Corey, or you can do closing thoughts. The problem with loan assessments given over time is people don't make the payments. That leads to higher delinquency rates and having to refinance the loan. Corey, true or false?
Partially true, partially false. And one of the things, and I'll lead into that, but one of the things I think that we missed today was that the timing of when the work needs to be done is really important. If you need to raise money through a special assessment between the notice, the meeting, and when the payments actually due, months can go by, as opposed to a loan. It's just a matter of having the notices to approve the loan and getting the money from the bank. So if there's an emergency situation, the loan option may be your best bet to get the money in the hands of the contractor first. And then and with regard to collections, whether it's you're doing a special assessment either for the project or a special assessment to repay the loan, the most important thing is if don't let your collections get out of hand. It's easier to collect a little bit amount of money than it is a lot of money for when boards sit on their hands. So get your collections to your attorneys as quickly as possible, so it doesn't get out of hand. And I had one more quick comment for closing. There's more than just two options. There's more than just a special assessment or getting a loan for the association. Individuals can also get personal loans. Maybe they get better rates than the association would. to pay the special assessment. So a personal loan is also the third option.
Okay. Dave, question and then closing thoughts. We had a huge insurance increase because the master deed requires us to caddy insurance. We did an insurance assessment, which did not need a vote. I don't understand the question. Do you understand it?
Probably the caddy, they meant to write carry, but.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's probably what. Yeah, this sort of ties into what I was going to say, which was, boards are fiduciaries, politicians, yes, but fiduciaries overall. And if they can't get the funding, either because the owners won't do it, owners can't do it, lenders won't provide it, it's a real problem. And frankly, the board members may have to consider resigning. Like you can't be on the board, in my view, and have an obligation to make repairs, but then just not do it because you don't think you can get the money. That can end really tragically for people and for you on a personal level. If you've decided to be the popular guy at the clubhouse by saying, I've been on the board for 6 years, I've never raised assessments once, and someone's building falls down, that's a real problem for you. So board members have to realize if they're unable to get the funding or unable to be leaders to get the funding, they have to think about maybe not being on the board.
Deb, I'll ask you that. Thanks, Dave. I'll ask you that same question for your closing thought, or you can do closing thoughts. We had a huge insurance increase because the master deed requires us to carry insurance. We did an insurance assessment, which did not need a vote. I guess that's a legal question still, Deb, or is it an insurance question? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a legal question because I don't know what does or does not require a vote. What I do see here in New York a lot of times is we're doing what's called deductible resolutions and trying to push the master deductible back onto the unit owners when claims happen. And some attorneys say you need votes, some attorneys say you don't. You can just do it by a rule and regulation change. But that all goes back to, again, their governing documents, which that allows them to do something like that. But I wanted to kind of bring in that whole insurance thing. All of this information is very important to your insurance agent because we need to understand, do you currently have a special assessment in place? Because insurance applications ask about it. We want to know the financial health of the community. We want to know that you're actually maintaining your buildings like you're supposed to. So if you know your roofs are 30 years old and you haven't been saving for the last 30 years and now you have to special assess to replace your roofs, underwriters take that into consideration when providing terms for the insurance coverage.
And then Dr. Ingram, just to warn you, I'm going to let you close us out with great words of wisdom that will last and make everyone feel good for the rest of the day. That's what we're looking for. Cynthia, am I getting an answer to this question? We had a huge, our commentary, we had a huge insurance increase because the master deed requires us to carry insurance. We did an insurance assessment, which did not need a vote. Should I just drop this one or?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that their documents allowed them to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. They found an alternative way to address it. But I think it comes down to what's in your documents. And something I want to point out as well is talk to your attorney and see what options you have. I know there's a lot of documents in North and South Carolina that have very specific restrictions and vote requirements for associations to obtain loans and to pay those loans back. And so when you're considering, are you going to do a special assessment or are you going to enter into a loan, talk to your attorney well in advance and see your options for each and what requirements you have, because you may not be able to do a loan. You might have to do a special assessment.
Okay. John, question and closing thoughts in 30 seconds. What is the guidance of a manager when due diligence has been done to bring forth the SA by the documents and the board refuses to comply and gets sued? The manager has to go to court with I can't read the rest of it from the system. Can you do that one? Or if you can't, don't worry about it. I'll get back to him.
Yeah, not really. I think they're saying, what if the board disregards the property manager's advice? I mean, we've dealt with that before in prior seminar. That may be grounds for the managing agent to terminate the contract.
All right, closing thoughts.
Yeah, quick closing thoughts. Don't be, so I found with special assessments that communities, sometimes there's a tendency to exaggerate the fear of collecting. You could collect special assessments just like you can collect common charges. And it's pretty much the same people that don't pay the common charges on time will be the ones that don't pay the special assessments, and vice versa. So if you have a 97% collection, you'll probably have that on special assessments. So don't be overly scared about it.
All right, Sean, I'm out of time. I want to leave time for Tom, though, really quick. Can the board vote to obtain a loan to mill and pave the entire roadway without putting it out to a vote to the ownership? If you can't answer that one, Sean, it's fine.
That is completely dependent on the governing documents. But as far as closing thoughts, one thing that's critical to consider that we haven't touched on yet is if you make a special assessment and one of the units doesn't pay but is lost to foreclosure, either from the association foreclosing on a lien or the bank closing on a lien, that assessment cannot be transferred to the next owner. It has to be, that hole has to be made up by everyone else. Whereas a loan, over time, if those payments are put into the regular assessments, then future owners of those units are paying into that loan repayment, where, that's kind of a critical distinction between the two options.
Excellent. All right, Tom, closing thoughts on today?
Well, I deal with this every day. I don't think getting a loan for the association is that complicated. You're getting buying power for everyone versus them trying to do it individually. But I think the key is two components. One, have a bank that specializes in association loans. And second, most important, what we talked about the first 15, 20 minutes, lay the groundwork, get the attorney involved, get the business partner involved, have a special meeting with everyone and communicate. And I don't think you'll have a problem. Every loan that I've ever been through is always gone according to plan because we gave good direction and the board was professional and followed what they need to do.
All right. I want to thank everybody for being here. I hope to see people later for feminist theory and HOA governance. And thanks again. And I hope to see everybody soon. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.